Hi, hello, my name is Ollie Bliss and this is my channel Book Drawer. For those who don't know, I enjoy looking at queer fiction and occasionally I make images out of it. Today I am doing a double wrap-up, so I might split this up into two, I'm not entirely sure. So I will try and go through these as quickly as possible for you, but also I really want to just share the joy that I've had over the last couple of months with these books, because all the books that I've read over these last 2 months I've really massively enjoyed. This could get a little bit spoilery though occasionally, just because of the content, so I will just give you that pre-warning. Starting with Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This book was brilliant. I saw the movie, I absolutely loved the movie. I thought the visual effects were awesome. I loved the pace of the adventure, and I just needed to visit the world more, basically. So on the day that I saw it in cinema, I went and got the book, and I just lapped this up really quickly. What I will say is that they are massively different to each other. It's basically like Spielberg just thought, oh, I like this idea. There's this kid, he lives in a future dystopian, he's got to collect some keys in order to get the inheritance of this old dead dude. James Holiday is basically this guy who created this world called Oasis, which is a virtual reality online world. People are desperate to just leave their status quo of their life and enter into this world. He dies, and in his will, he's like, right, if you want to take over this company, have access to everything, you've got to go out and hunt for these keys, and then you will, through this treasure hunt, become my entitled heir. So in the first challenge, there's this race, didn't happen. In the book, there's just this kind of arcade game which he goes up and has to play and compete against. Whereas in the film, epic sequence of footage where they're following this racetrack. There are these giant cannibals swinging around. There is a T-Rex which is clearly been implanted by Spielberg to reference himself as a little 90s reference, not 80s, but also just to kind of tag that he has been present and he's there, which irritated me a lot, because it was out of context of the rest of the film. And then there's these cannibals, there's this giant Kong at the end, and to get to this impossible course, you're supposed to be able to travel beyond the Kong, and it's like an impossible task. If you want to go into all of that detail, I recommend go check out Emma's Bookish Lifestyle. She's done a really brilliant comparison video between the two. So just want to briefly talk about H, who is Helen Harris, best friend of Wade, who's the lead character. So her character in the book, she's a African-American lesbian character who presents herself as a masculine, big, bulky dude on Oasis. And part of the reason why that was is because her mum says the great thing about Oasis is that it gives women of colour an opportunity to have that equal footing by presenting themselves as a white man. And I just thought that that was a really interesting, nuanced way of having conversation and dialogue about how it is to present in the world and what it means to be equal. And all of those things were really interesting and revealed in quite a dynamic way towards the end of the book, but they just weren't touched on in the narrative of the film, which I thought was a shame on Spielberg, because it was kind of like a real opportunity just to acknowledge it and not put in a place of erasure, which instead it chose to by just not even acknowledging it in any way. It kind of disheartened me a little bit, basically. Ready Player One as a book is fantastic. As a film, it's brilliant as well, but two totally different experiences, basically. So, the next one is Kafka on the Shore, which is by Haruki Murakami. And I really enjoyed this book. It is madly pickling to your brain. So the lead character is Kafka, you don't actually know his true identity. He just adopts the name Kafka because he's running away from a situation where his hands are covered in blood and he thinks he's killed his father. He thinks he has been cursed and is kind of living this self-fulfilling prophecy where he's going to kill his father, have sex with his mother and sister, which on the surface looks bizarre, and the whole book is super bizarre. But it's one of these stories which has two separate stories happening and they converge together. What I liked about this is that those two separate stories worked in isolation and they came together really well. Some of the themes which I liked about it seem to be about identity. So Kafka appears to be in a situation where he is becoming of age. He's maturing into an adult. He has this presence of going through this process of will he end up sleeping with his mother, and there seems to be like a kind of focus on that part, but I think that is almost like hiding what's really going on, which is about his individual maturity and him gaining self-control and actually moving away from his parents and being able to define himself as a person. That's what I felt as I was reading through it. It's hard because it's kind of graphically described some of the sex scenes, which it kind of makes you go it's a bit weird. But I think it's supposed to be a device which is meant to be unsettling, but at its heart you also feel his sense of control and maturity and almost facing a bit of a nightmare for himself or a conflict. And it feels like that is something which is happening throughout the book, because there is this recurring theme about a labyrinth. So, because his father is an artist and he's created this piece which is based around a labyrinth. He also talks to his son in terms of telling him the things which are imposed upon him and the curse that he's going to be facing. So he is struggling to overcome those barriers and those hurdles. Additionally, there is a physical labyrinth, which is a forest, which plays a massive part towards the end. And also there are these other little themes in terms of the Aztecs would pull out your innards and they would look at your innards in the shape of the entrails to form mazes, and that was about fortune telling for the future, but also the things that are in yourself and how basically your identity is splayed out to reveal these hidden meanings in the future. So there's this kind of push and pull with real spaces and these metaphysical spaces, and that seems to be happening as a tension throughout the book. There's this separate storyline with Nakata, who is this elderly man who seems to be a real innocent, and he doesn't have all his mental faculties in place, but he has the ability to talk to cats. And there's this great innocence within him, but he is trying to find this cat which has been abducted and taken away, and he comes up against this villainous character called Johnny Walker, who is stuff of nightmares, basically. It's absolutely horrific. The things that happen to those cats completely scarred me. But I got the sense that that storyline was more about morals and of being forced to overcome issues. So there's this almost like this tension between id and superego between those two characters, and I felt like it's grappling with the concept of self throughout the book. There seemed to be this overarching theme of internalized identity and identity as a construct. But it gets super weird, it's super fantastical. It's also quite subdued and mundane in some ways. So there's these real kind of fantastical elements, but underneath it is these everyday occurrences which kind of ground it in our world, which is very kind of strange. It's also got great representation in terms of trans, because there is a female to male trans character, and he was probably one of my favourite characters actually in the book, and he's really erudite, can really turn an argument inside out, and but also is incredibly caring to Kafka as well. So I had a lot of love for the book, but it did really pickle my brain throughout. So the next one which I want to talk about is Catch-22, which is by Jospeh. I had no idea how funny this book was going to be. This just had me in hysterics throughout. It's actually pretty dark and quite complex as an overall concept, but just the actual narrative between the characters are hilarious and ludicrous and absurd, and it plays on really absurd humour throughout.
A direct hit on the ocean?
Yes, sir. A marvelous bomb pattern. We have aerial photographs if
Right
you'd
on.
like to see them.
Are you telling me we're going to decorate a bunch of men who dropped 20 tons of very expensive bombs on the Mediterranean?
So the lead character, Usarian, is it's a part of an Air Force team, and he has to do a certain number of runs flying over as part of the war before he can do his time, do his service, and stop serving for the war, basically. And he is trying to desperately stop and leave and get out of doing any more runs because he's terrified that he's going to get killed off. And he's really clear in the book about the threat of being killed off by a country, his own country, who is forcing him to go off and fight when he doesn't want to have anything to do with that. It doesn't actually affect him or impact on him, and he feels forced. He feels like he's being played and a part of something that is an unseen enemy that he doesn't understand or have any real beef with. And I think this is a really important thing to highlight with war. Like, a lot of people enter into wars, it seems, without fully really knowing who they have beef with, and end up all killing themselves. And he's just an innocent person who actually just doesn't want to fight anyone, and he just wants to live. And there's something incredibly depressing about this story in the way that he almost gets to that place, he almost finds the way out, but is trapped back in, and it happens again, and it keeps on happening. And it's the repetition, which is actually quite draining part of this book, and the reason why it's so big. But there is a purpose to that in terms of how it slowly destroys and erodes him as a person, but he does end up finding a reason to fight and a reason to survive. So it's kind of hopeful towards the end, but it also really highlights the role of capitalism, the role of bureaucracy, the role of power structures, and how they are never in the favour of the masses. The last one which I want to talk about is Rebeca by Daphne du Maurier, which I listened to as an audiobook, and it was a really interesting experience. Like, I didn't know too much about the story. Basically, there is a Mrs. De Winter II who is taking over the role of Lady of the House for Manderly, which is this grand stately home which she's occupying as wife to Mr. De Winter, and she feels overcome by the shadow of Rebeca, who was the first wife, who's perfect in every way, and she just does not live up to the standard of this woman who understood her role, her place in this world, whereas she is a kind of working class girl who's basically fallen well on her feet and managed to fall in love with this widower, and feels that she's inadequate and unable to reach the standard that is expected of her. Just love this whole narrative, the way it goes off on one, and you can just see her sat there imagining herself in different roles in the house, and you just totally become that person, and it was just very relatable narrative. But anyway, this is the first half. I will come back with the second half for you soon, which will be looking at May. I've just gone through April for now, and I feel like I've dissected a lot of these enough for you for the moment. But anyway, take care, and I will see you again soon. Alright, bye!